You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinesic.
We must be doing pretty good. So this is I don't even know what we'd call this. It's not really a secret tape.
Road trip.
It's a road trip edition of Native Plants Healthy Planet. We are in the car on the way to MANTS, and which is the Mid-Atlantic Nursery Trade Show. And
we still have an hour and a half to kill.
Oh yeah, hour and a half to kill. We figured we shouldn't let any time go wasted. We have, instead of sitting here and talking about food and life problems, that kind of stuff, we figured, hey, why not use this time productively and get some content out of it?
I will say, on the way home from setting up MANTS, we talked about food the whole time. I was starving by the time I got home.
Yeah, and my wife did approve of my plan for dinner on Friday, because we're going to drive past, I'll drive past that place Lillo's, which is supposed to be like one of the best new pizza and cheesesteak places in South Jersey.
Yeah.
So, she was on board with that.
Awesome.
So, surprise! I always get confused because it's in Hainesport, New Jersey, and I'm like, oh yeah, Hainesport is much further away than I think it is, but it's not. It's actually a lot closer than I think it is. I'm like, oh yeah, Hainesport's close, and then I'm like, oh no, it's like more like half an hour, 40 minutes away. I'm like, no, it's 15 to 20.
No, it's close, yeah.
So that's the plan on Friday, but we're really excited to go down to this because we haven't done really a live trade show in 2+ years.
It's been a long time, and even if where there were live shows, the threat of COVID was still looming, and they weren't very well attended.
Yeah, it felt like, we just went the one day just kind of check out and see who was there.
Yeah.
Even though we've set up our booth. I went down, I think, a couple days early, set up the booth, and then we just went down the last day and just walked around for like an hour or two to see who was all there, and then left. And you could tell, like, everyone was like a little on edge.
Yeah.
Everyone's masked up and just...
You're trying to distance, you're trying to be safe, and everyone just seemed a little uncomfortable.
So, but this year seems to be different.
There's an excitement.
Yeah.
People are excited to be able to talk to each other face to face, shake hands.
So, and I know just from social media, there's a lot of folks that are planning on coming to see us because they either listen to our podcast or follow our social media accounts. So some people we haven't been able to get to meet in person, but we've made a connection with over the last 2 years that we're going to finally get to meet. So
that's exciting.
Yeah, that's exciting. But the main thing we wanted to do today was talk about a topic I kind of picked out, and that was, what do we wish we knew 10 years ago that we know now? Particularly native plants now,
Okay.
Fran. I don't want you going way off topic here. I wish I knew the Phillies were going to be in the World Series.
Yeah, man, I would have bet that much differently.
Yeah.
I don't, just for clarification, it's 7:15 in the morning, and I don't know how coherent I'm going to be because I haven't had Magic Mind or coffee or anything. So,
he's living that clean life.
Yes.
That I wake up like this every day. My wife is like always surprised because my alarm will go off and I'll literally just like roll out of bed and I'm like I've been up for an hour.
Well,
just like in the flow of things. I'm talking normally, and she's very much the person who's like really groggy. It takes her a while to like get going, and I don't know. I'm that way on the other end where I'm like, it's time to go to sleep. I know you want to stay out with your friends. I need to go to sleep or I'm literally going to fall asleep right here.
My motives are different today. Like when I got up, Agatha made coffee and I was looking at it and she was like, you want a cup? And I was like, no. She's like, why not? Just make a cup. And I was like, we're going to be cutting it close. And if I have a cup of coffee, I'm going to have to go to the bathroom.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want to stop. So, let's see, what do I wish I knew 10 years ago? Professionally speaking, not so much in the world of native plants, but professionally speaking for me, when I came to Pinelands, I had to learn, like I knew plants, but I didn't know them the way I needed to know them. So, I became a sponge and I learned what I needed to learn. but it was more to be a better salesman or to do my job better. At least I thought at that point. Like, I need to know the products if I'm going to sell, because I came from that type of background.
Yep.
But I didn't really get it or embrace it till we started doing the podcast, that I can do my job better, and I'm better at my job by being passionate. Not that I wasn't passionate about it, just I didn't have a full... I got it, but I didn't understand it, if that makes sense. Like, I knew it, but I didn't grasp it.
Yeah, and I definitely was in the same way, too. So, I grew up in this business, and I kind of went through some of the same things, and...
You're on the family end, so it has to be a business. Like,
yeah. And it was, I didn't get it until I started working in it, and then really a lot of it was exposure to people we had on the podcast, like Bill Young and Emil DeVito, and people who already got it. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, this is more than just, we aren't just growing plants, we're growing plants that make a difference. They're creating habitat, they're preventing erosion, I think that might have been part of it too, is I really was focused more on the erosion side of things, and less on the habitat and ecosystem side of things.
Yes.
I knew that was like a auxiliary benefit. I didn't think of it as much of a main benefit.
Yeah.
And I think that's still the case in the industry. People are more thinking erosion control than habitat, but I'm just thinking of the plants we have. A lot more of them, more main focus is habitat now, where it used to not be.
Yeah, most of my contact with customers were the people that were boots on the ground doing the work, not the environmentalists or the engineers that had a better understanding of why the work needed to be done.
Yep.
So I was learning what I needed to know to work with the people I needed to work with, but being exposed to all these other people kind of enlightened me. And it's changed, I feel at least it's changed how I do my job, because I have a much different understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I just wish, I've been here 15 years, or doing this end of it 15 years. I wish I would have known that a lot sooner than now.
Yeah.
And I feel like your dad got it, was trying to nudge me in the right direction, but I wasn't getting it.
Yeah, it's, it was up until recently, I think, where I finally started to get it. And even how I started to get it first was more out of guilt. It was like, well, now that I know this stuff, I can't not have a native plant garden at home. I can't not advocate for this stuff. When I know it's clearly better, when you look at scientific data, we're talked about it with National Wildlife Federation.
Mary Phillips.
With Mary Phillips, not Foundation, Federation. And I forget where I was going with that. I got sidetracked on the Foundation Federation thing. And then I remember the secret I told you, and it was like, I don't know, I've been doing that a lot lately. This is one of the moments that I'm actually glad this is getting brought up. This is one of the moments I'm, wondering if a listener is going to write in and they happen to be a doctor or a nurse or something and be like, oh, you have something seriously wrong. You need to go to a doctor right now. Yeah, there's something wrong with you that this is happening.
Yeah, this isn't funny.
This is typical. But I've been screwing up the Foundation Federation or association society thing at the end of things. So I'm the vice president of the New Jersey Nursery and Landscape Association. I'm on a conference call with our executive director, Lori Jensen, who's been on the podcast too. And it's we're doing introductions. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm the vice president of the New Jersey Nursery and Landscape Society. And I'm like, I don't know why I just said that. It just came out that way. I'd never said it that way before in my life. But now I can't stop saying it. I just that's what just comes out.
I think we're at such a time of the year where there's so much going on. Yeah. We're being pulled in so many directions. It's hard not to do those things. Yeah. But you were saying, once you kind of realize the importance of doing it. And, feeling guilty not doing it.
Yeah, so I felt guilty not doing it, and then it kind of switched into a more of this is really important, and well, I guess I still feel guilty if I didn't do it. I look at my garden now,
Because you know better.
and I'm like, how can I choose to plant something that isn't giving back just for my personal wants? And that's just how I am as a person. I tend to be a little too honest sometimes because I just can't bring myself to lie about things, even if it's for the greater good of someone's emotions.
Yeah.
So.
Well, even with talking with Mary, and I don't want to go into it too much. I know by the time you hear this, that will have aired, but I kind of like to discuss it more on the buzz.
Yeah.
Also, because I have after reading all the links that she sent, I have so much more to say. We could have talked to Mary for another hour easily.
Yeah.
But
one of the things
I was just saying I was really proud after talking to her and looking into what it takes to make your yard a certified wildlife habitat, that my yard actually qualified.
Yeah.
And I actually got it certified like the same day we talked to Mary. And I'm very proud of that. And the research that, hey, we know that the yards that are certified have more birds and more diverse birds. And that, there's proof that all this is working and people are catching on.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I feel like not as only just catching on with the general public, it's catching on with me, and it should, because we're the carriers of that information.
Definitely.
There's a responsibility to it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wish I knew probably like 10 years ago was about the crux of it, or about that time where I really wish I knew this then, or I would be way further ahead of where I am now, was how connected all these, a lot of my hobbies are, in that I like to have a vegetable garden at home. I really enjoy hunting and fishing. I wouldn't say I really love, gardening per se, like visual gardening, but so many of those things that I like to do, like hiking, hunting, fishing, even vegetable gardening, is they're so connected, to the outdoors. I always thought of them as their own individual pockets, and it was actually hunting podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I've told this story numerous times too. Listen to a lot of podcasts and realized, hey, this is a great way to learn things, about things you're passionate in. Well, I kind of stopped hunting when I was in college. I was getting back into it. Started listening to podcasts, and I'm like, I should listen to podcasts about hunting, because I listen to some of the smartest people, and some of them are just a little bit too, I guess yee is one way to put it. A little, I don't want to say redneck as a negative term, but a little bit, I don't know the right term to put it, but I'm hoping people understand the vibe that I'm talking about. Then I came across a couple. There's one called Wired to Hunt that was just much more analytical, thought the way I think about things, just very data-driven approaches to stuff, and would talk to experts, but then really dive into the reasoning behind why they did stuff, not just, oh yeah, I did this and I saw a big buck and or I did that. But they started to talk about habitat stuff and the ethics behind why they were doing what they're doing. Same thing with the Meat Eater podcast, was a big fan. They talk about the ethics of why they do what they do and how important the ecosystem is to what they do. And then through another string of, I started listening to Land and Legacy podcasts, and then that's where it really connected the dots. Oh, native plants and hunting native animals really go hand in hand. If you want to have good hunting opportunities, it's connected to the native ecosystems, and our native ecosystems are in decline. And I start thinking about all these other things I learned about deer overabundance, and we're losing pollinators, and this is all connected. Every single, even if I want to have better yields in my vegetable garden at home, it helps to plant native plants around it, because you're attracting pollinators that are then going to go and pollinate the tomatoes and pollinate your eggplants and pollinate all the other stuff that you have in there, your peppers. If you don't have you'll still get plants, but that's when you look at hydroponic tomato houses. You're either bringing in bees, or they're literally taking electric toothbrushes and pollinating the flowers to get that buzz to knock the pollen loose. And Fran, we're officially in Delaware. I just point that out. We're crossed from New Jersey into Delaware. which is only a short portion of our journey
Not far
as
from
we
where-
cross into to Maryland.
Not far from where I used to live.
But yeah, just that realization that all this stuff is connected. No matter what your hobby is, there's probably some exceptions, but
There's
so many of your hobbies are connected to just having native plants. And
I agree, and in turn, I feel more connected. Same thing, like I did podcasts now. Like it's amazing doing a podcast about this. I've always loved photography. You know, I was doing my kids' sports and then concerts. Now I do nature photography and bird photography, and like how much I love birding. Now it's amazing that maybe I hadn't had made that connection if it wasn't for this.
Yeah.
You know, and Agatha was making fun of me because we went for a hike on Saturday and Sunday, and I took my camera both days so I could take pictures of birds. And I'm like, if I stop, just keep walking. I'll catch up with you.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just how much I enjoyed. You know, and I mentioned it when we were talking with Mary. I sat in the backyard for an hour just taking pictures of birds. And I feel more connected in a way that I never have, and I wish I would have discovered it earlier. But in the same thing, maybe I wasn't ready 10 years ago. Like, you have to walk that journey, and I got there in my own time. You know, and I think that a lot can be said for that in life in general, just what you're ready to do when you're ready to do it.
Yeah, I think, doors open when they're, well, I shouldn't say when you're ready, because doors open all the time.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're just not ready, or you don't see that door open. But it's just that sense of knowing that all this stuff is connected. Just it blows my mind to this day when we're talking about stuff, because even when we're talking about the episode with Mary, it's like she talks about all these other organizations they're connected with that don't all hold the same. They hold a similar mission, but not the same mission. Yeah. But while this is a phrase I use a lot, while the end goal may be different, the process is the same.
Yes.
If we want to have better hunting habitat for deer, ducks, or turkeys, creating healthy habitat for them to live and eat and all that is really important. Yeah. If you want to have better pollinator habitat, you need to create more pollinators and more birds. You need to have the plants that are going to kind of provide the food and the cover and all that for them.
Yeah.
And this is where it blew my mind, is those things are the same. The plants that you need for both of those things are the same. Now, for individual species, they're a little different. That's an overgeneralization, but a spice bush in the woods, while it's great for spice bush swallowtails, is also great for deer cover. And a lot of these, we even joke around about it. There was that power plant that wanted to put in pollinator habitat because they didn't want to mow it. It was a financial savings, and then they could take that. If we plant pollinator plants, then we can flip it around and put it as promotional market. Hey, look what we're doing. So it was a double win for them. They were saving money on maintenance. They didn't have to mow it anymore. And then they could also use it as marketing, saying, look how green we are.
Yes. Even
though I think they were nuclear, so I don't want to say they're burning coal and oil and all that stuff. But even though we're doing something that is extractive, we're giving back in a different way. And but they said when they group tested it, they couldn't use the word pollinator because people thought of bees, and then people thought of bee allergies, and it had a negative connotation. Yeah. Where if you switched to monarch, everyone loved it. Same exact plants. The plan did not change. It was literally the name and the framing.
It's amazing, just the wording, how it catches or how it doesn't. It amazes me. It's and we've seen this with other corporations too. And I don't want to name names, but there was a corporation that created a 40-acre wetlands as a wastewater treatment. And they were able to save money, do it naturally, and use it as a good marketing technique to say, hey, look what we're doing. We're giving back. We're doing things the right way. And it was a big deal. And it's, I'll take those. Whatever the motive is, I'll take those because they're doing good for so many. It created so many good things. But I know sometimes motives are different to do it, but as long as the work gets done, that's all I care about.
So one of the things I wish an additional thing I wish I knew 10 years ago, even 3 years ago, I wish I knew plant ID. Even now, still way better than I do. I'm a lot better than I was, but I really wish I paid attention to my dad when we were driving around or walking around saying, "Hey, what tree's this? What tree's that?"
But
because it is a really, really important skill when you are outside.
It is, but it's a lot of trees, it's a lot of plants to try to remember. Yeah. Like, and I've had walks with your dad too, where like going through the pine barrens, giving me tips to identify the pines in certain ways. But if you're not doing it all the time, he gave me that information 10 years ago, and because it was not like something that stands out, like, oh, a sycamore has white bark. You know what I mean? Like, it was something a little more nuanced. I don't remember.
Yeah.
So unless you're practicing it, a lot of these things, like if you're going for a hike and you're like, see how many plants you can name while you're hiking. I do it all the time. I'm like, this is this. That's the common name. That's the botanical name. Just trying to get it into my memory. So
and for those who are taking that tip and want to do it at home, consider doing it to yourself, because there's nothing that's going to annoy people more than doing that out loud. The amount of times my wife's like, "Hey, you just need to stop a little bit because not everyone cares."
Yeah.
When I'm walking around and saying, "Oh, look, it's a wild grape. Oh, there's grapes on there. We should eat them." Or like, "Oh, I get excited about all kinds of stuff."
I only say 1 in 10 aloud.
Yeah.
Where people can hear it. The other ones are just internally in my head.
Yeah. But one of the things also just hiking around and doing that, and maybe people heeded my advice earlier and were doing it internally, and that's why I don't know that they're doing it, but it's just kind of amazing to me how many people enjoy hiking. Like, we'll go out to a nature center and do a hike, and I'm thinking of one moment. People aren't even, like, one, if they're paying attention to the plants at all, is surprising, but two, that they definitely don't know a lot of the names of the plants. So, while I criticize myself for not being able to identify plants as well as I should in my mind, I'm still better than most, I think. It's just the circles we run around with. I feel embarrassed because I'm like, oh, these people know their stuff way better than I do. But then again, my role in the business isn't so much that stuff too.
They're doing it every day though, too.
Yeah.
And that's more their job to know that. One of the things I wish I would have known 10 years ago or done 10 years ago was just eat a little healthier. Especially now that I'm older. Like, even to keep weight in check, I've always said, I'll just eat less. I want to keep eating the way I eat.
Yep.
Understanding everything that we understand now makes me want to treat myself better and do the right thing and eat healthier, and why it's important and what I'm putting in my body, which I didn't realize. I've always joked around with Agatha that, like, you see the reports of like the 95-year-old woman that eats bacon every day, or person that, like, I kind of feel like, was it you and I that were talking about the guy who hadn't showered in so many years?
Oh, no, I did hear about it,
and I'm like, that's going to be me if I start eating healthy, because my body, after all these years, has grown accustomed. It learned how to process how I eat, and I'm trying to do it gradually, but I'm enjoying eating better and healthier, even though it's not every meal, but I'm happy that I can incorporate it. Maybe over time it will become more.
Yeah.
But it's nice that, when you're younger, you just have that, you're immortal and nothing's going to wreck me. At least I did.
Yeah.
Like, I can do whatever I want. I'll be fine. And now that I'm older, it's like, maybe not. Maybe I need to care for myself. But it's not even just I need to. It's having an understanding I want to.
Yeah. And one of the things we were talking about yesterday is something that Jennifer Maynard, who was on our Soils pod episode, Rude Discussion, said is you should be buying, like, the U.S. is unique as a whole as compared to other countries because food has to be cheap. Everyone wants the cheapest food, and, like, I know my mom does it, my mother-in-law does it, my My wife even does. I even do it. I come back from the store and say, hey, I was able to get this pork roast or whatever. It had the $1 off sticker. I saved all this money. Like, and she's like, it's a something that's going on in American brains where when we go to the grocery store, everything's supposed to be as cheap as possible. And realistically, we need to flip that, and you need to buy the highest quality food you can afford.
Yeah.
That tends to be less processed, more humanely or better raised, when you come to meat. And a lot of that money tends to go back, or more of it goes back to the farmer,
Yes.
versus all the people who are in the middle who take that chicken and turn it into a chicken nugget, because it goes from the chicken farmer to here to here to here to the processor to all these other, and everyone's taking their nickel or their dime, and then the farmer's left with a few pennies. If you're doing something where you're spending a little bit more money, a lot of times that's at farmers markets, and you're getting to know that farmer, or even at the grocery store. A lot more of the money ends up making its way back to the farm in those cases. And I'll actually share that, Fran, where or spin off of that. One of the things I really wish I knew, even 4 years ago, is how much of our backyards and things in the woods are edible. It's like I was saying, I feel guilty if I plant something that's not native, so much that I don't really plant anything that's not native, other than my vegetable garden. But even then, it's starting to creep into there and saying, well, what are some native plants I could be planting here instead and using as vegetables? Instead of planting broccoli, should I be planting pokeweed? And use the not that you have to plant pokeweed, but using the pokeweed for using the greens and I made poke salad. It was delicious. It was really good.
I feel like I always have to say you have to cook it thoroughly or it will. It's poisonous.
Well, that's because the one guy, even though after we said it, said, "Oh, you shouldn't be telling people to eat that because my mom cooked it once and all of us got sick." And I'm like, "Well, I said you have to, like, I think I blanched it for." And typically, when you say blanch, it's like a very quick thing.
Yeah.
I blanched it for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I looked up 6 different recipes when I made the poke salad. I looked up like 5 different recipes, and the shortest amount of time anyone said to cook it for was 5 minutes. The longest anyone said was 30 minutes. I said, I'm going to go somewhere in the middle, and I was probably closer to 15 when it was all said and done. And, it was really good. Like, it didn't have much of a flavor originally, like by itself, but like you add a little seasoned salt, or, one of the recipes said traditionally they use bacon grease, and just like toss it with a little bacon grease, and it was phenomenal, and I'm sure it had to be pretty good for you.
Yeah.
But
anything's good with bacon grease.
Yeah, even beyond that, like the black cherry Wishniak I made, or cordial I made. It's been growing in my front yard for who knows how many years. I've passed so many black cherry trees, never even thought about using the berries. I saw something actually where they took someone took the seeds, and I think they added it to a flour to add a little bit of like almond flavor.
Oh, wow.
But I think the seeds can be a little toxic. A lot of this stuff can be toxic if you have too much.
Don't they even say like potato isn't good for you raw?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
yep.
Like a lot of things that we eat normally, we just take for granted. You cook it all the time. You don't think about eating it in its raw form.
Yeah, but like Comptonia or Sweet Fern, you can eat the seeds.
Make tea out of the leaves.
You can make tea out of the leaves. I've even seen some recipes where they'll take the leaves and use it as if you similar to how you use rosemary or thyme in like a braise, where you go you're making that braise and you throw the rosemary and thyme in it on top at the end. They bundle up sweet fern leaves and do the same thing. I'm trying to think. There's so much out there that I'm just trying to get into, and that was Sam Thayer's advice: is you need to know every plant that's edible. You just need to know the one that you're going to eat.
Yeah.
I'm trying to expand that. I'm probably around 10 now, where I know it. I'm comfortable eating it. I do need to make gumbo.
All right.
Because I took sassafras leaves and I made filet powder out of them. But I need to make gumbo so I can use them. Because I don't know what else you could you use them for.
Yeah.
I grew up in New Jersey, not Louisiana. So if you are listening from Louisiana and you know other things to do with delay powder, shoot me a message because I'd love to know about it.
I would like to know more. I wish I would have. I wish I would have learned more about foraging or edible native plants, because I'm enjoying discovering it now, and it's like teas, like Monarda tea or sweet fern tea, those types of things. Like we have blueberry in our yard. We tend to let the wildlife get it, but I hope to enjoy at least like a small handful every year. And that's something. A lot of what we planted was to help incorporate some of that also. So I'm hoping that becomes a bigger part too. I would love to go foraging more, like for mushrooms. That's one thing I keep saying I'm going to do, and I never do it.
Yeah.
Or I never find the time to do it at the time you need to do it.
Yeah, I've done it a little bit, but I just haven't had success. I got a hot tip, or I think we all got a hot tip from Joe Cermelli about morels, and look where it was tulip poplars and May apples. Yeah. And I got a spot.
All right.
Well, you told me about the spot,
and
I went to it. I didn't find one. But it's
But you saw the spot though, right?
But I saw the spot, and I was like, oh yeah, there was so many of those combos there that it was hard to find a place to actually look because it was like, and then it was like, well, I don't know how far away I look from the tree. Is it right at the base, or is it going to be up to 10 feet out, 20 feet? I have no idea. But it's one of those things where, from what I've heard, it's one of those things that's like, it takes forever to find the first one. And then once you've seen one in the wild, then it's like, oh, this is...
Oh, there's another one.
Yeah, this is like, it's a lot easier. Same thing happens with shed hunting for antlers. Okay. Is like, once you see one, it takes forever to find the first one. You'll stumble across them, but when you're actually looking for them, it can take forever just because your eyes aren't like in tune with what they look like. And so much so that a lot of people recommend take sheds you found before, bring them out and put them out there, like kind of hide them, because then you'll like kind of train your eyes to know what they look like before you go out. But which is another thing. It's I guess this is something I wish I knew that I've been considering more and more is the concept of leaving more of this stuff. Like I really enjoy shed hunting. It just gets me outside. I'm walking around looking for deer antlers. For people who don't know, I would assume most people know this, but white-tailed deer and a variety of other species deer, they drop their antlers every year. So in the spring, they'll grow these antlers up until about August. Then they'll start or September is when they'll actually shed the velvet. So you'll have a fuzzy coating on this. It's a live bone growth, basically. And there's blood running to it. Well, the blood-carrying skin starts to peel away and fall off. And then they'll have their antlers. The males will. They'll have their antlers. And then in the winter, about this time of year, January, February, even late March, those antlers actually just fall off. And there's some really cool research now where you can tell how healthy the deer was by how the antler fell off. It was grown in, or if it's concave or convex. Okay. You can kind of tell if it was well nourished or malnourished. But I'd really go and just enjoy walking around in the woods and looking for these antlers. They make really cool, like, discussion pieces. I have two. There was an 8-pointer, and I found the match set. So you get there's two antlers on each deer, one on each side. Sometimes you'll just find one side. Sometimes you'll find both. So I found both. They were 10 feet apart from each other. And it just looks really impressive just having it kind of set to the woodsy tone of our living room. And I found it for free in the woods. Yeah. So I just enjoyed doing it. But then I've been thinking a lot lately.
You know what you got to do?
It's like...
You know how, like, people... I don't... It popped up on my Facebook where people will take shells, grow with a gun, and then take it somewhere else and say, if you find it, post a picture. You should just start planting antler sheds.
So, well, not to get too... Well, two things before we get too sidetracked. First, we crossed into Maryland about 10, 15 minutes ago. We forgot to update everyone. We are now in Maryland, well on our way to Baltimore. And two, for 2 years now, I've had a rock right in my glove compartment right here that says, it's probably underneath the mask.
Oh, there it is.
You can pull it out. I found that in Lake Placid, New York. And
wow,
the back,
look at that.
it's, there was a note on it at some point that said, like, take this or hide it. Like, you can keep it or hide it. Just, like, take a picture, put it on social media, and then go from there. I hope the note's in there, because otherwise I have no clue what I'm supposed to put it on. But, oh, you find money?
No.
Oh, okay. But,
not a vehicle ticket, like a parking
parking
lot ticket.
But, yeah, but that's an interesting idea, is you take stuff, it's a big thing on cruises, too. They have, like, these cruising ducks, and
yeah.
I was kind of against the idea of the cruising ducks until I saw how much my son enjoyed finding one. And I'm like, okay, I'm all in on cruising ducks now. But, anyway, what I've really been thinking about is how, by doing that, I'm interrupting a really important cycle in the woods for something.
Yeah.
Mice eat the antlers. I'm sure there's other things that eat those antlers, and it's an important part of their diets for that time of year because, like, they've evolved that this is what I eat at this time of year
yeah.
because it provides me with, I'm assuming, calcium and different nutritional stuff that I'm going to need for the winter. And by picking that up and taking it away, I'm sure I'm not by any means picking up all the antlers in the woods. I barely find one set a year.
Yeah.
But if everyone's finding one set a year, how many mice are now not able to, or like how many of them are suffering because I took it just so I could sit on my mantle? I think the same thing about seashells. And I was like, the shells are like, you think about, well, hermit crabs reuse old shells. What other things are eating shells or using shells or utilizing? By taking them away, we're actually, and this isn't just I've read this someplace, and then it really started to click. And I'm like, oh crap, I probably should. And same thing with, think about with Indian artifacts or Native American artifacts, is like, I heard some interviews with all these things I start reading some stuff about seashells and then the antlers, and heard some interviews with Native Americans saying that they feel the best practice is if you find an arrowhead.
Yeah.
Some of them just say you shouldn't even touch it, just leave it there, take pictures, but don't pick it up. Some of them say you can pick it up, but leave it where you found it. And I know a lot of people who started doing that.
Yeah.
Like, you take pictures so it can be identified, but it was left there for a reason.
Yeah.
And maybe not purposefully left there, but it's there for a reason, and it's wrong to disturb it in some way. So yeah, I think about that with shells and all kinds of stuff. Even with foraging, well, what else could be eating it?
Well,
so
perfect. It's not really segues what we're talking about. Well, one thing I wish I'd known was how much of an impact I have personally.
Yeah.
To the land and the environment. Like I'm much more conscious in what I do. And it's like in planting new native plants, I'm like, I really need to water these to establish. Why am I not collecting rainwater?
Yeah.
Why don't I have a rain barrel? Or if I do this, these are the consequences of me doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I realize more of my impact. Or why am I raking leaves? Like, I should be leaving the leaves. They're important. They're there for a reason. I'm much more conscious in everything I do environmentally as to what the impact was. I wish I had started that years ago, but I'm happy that I'm at that point now where I'm at least asking myself those questions and trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, and another thing I just thought of that it was, I guess I could save it for follow-up on a buzz. I probably will use it on follow-up as a buzz before this. I said something like ballot box ecologist or something like that about how people can vote for stuff that won't have any impact on their lives, and you have people who are impacted don't get a greater say. It's called ballot box biology.
All right.
I realized that last night when I was getting ready for this, listening to a podcast, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it's called, ballot box biology. I could not come up with biology on the original episode, but I'll cover that at another point at some point. But yeah, it's I think it's just important to be conscious. You can make decisions, like, we're driving in a car right now. I'm consciously making a decision to put emissions into the atmosphere, to extract oil from the ground. I'm sure there's cobalt in the car, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on with mining. There's lithium in batteries. That we're consciously making a decision just so we can go to Baltimore and sit in
Talk about native ecology.
Talk about native ecology. But I think you just have to be conscious of that stuff. It's impractical to say I'm not going to have any impact, because just being alive, you are impacting other things. You are by us two being in a car individually, being alive, we are causing something else to not live as full of a life. Whether it's a bacteria, just that's the cost of living. I think you just have to be conscious of that kind of stuff and measure your decisions. You don't want to get decision paralysis where it's like, I can't do anything. But like, just I could sit on a rock in the middle of the woods. I'm still impacting something else's ability to live because I'm sitting on a rock. I'm covering up where they might, like that moss might want to grow, and now it can't.
I'm looking at even just small decisions, like the difference between this trip to Baltimore than the last one we made where we spent the time.
Yep.
We would have had a case of bottled water with us to last us
through
the trade show.
Yep.
And this time I have my Yeti, you have your Hydro Flask.
Uh-huh.
Like, we made a conscious decision to do that and do the right thing.
Yeah.
Like, so it's, I feel happy that, like, we're slowly some things are happening much faster than other decisions and realizations, but we're slowly getting there. It's only taken 140 episodes of podcasts to help drive us there. But it's not, but as we listen, we realize that all of this makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're not just following what anyone says. We're talking to experts that are giving us the best scientific advice to how to make things better, ecosystems healthier, make things better for all wildlife, humans, animal, insects.
One of the things that's been really interesting about that for me, as we've gone through almost 3 years of episodes now, is we get experts on from all over the spectrum. Now we haven't, although we've talked about getting things from both green energy and extractive energy, and some things where people might have different opinions. But going back, I guess my thought is almost every single one of our guests have said the same thing. I don't think anyone's really disagreed on principle, like the main.
No, I agree.
The main things we need to do as humans.
I don't think we've had anything controversial.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's not controversial to us, but it's like we haven't had an instance where, and this happens on other podcasts, where it's like you have one guest. As the sun's starting to get a little bright, I'm realizing I forgot my sunglasses at home.
Yeah, me too.
But we're going to be inside for 3 days, so why does it matter? But it's like we haven't had one guest who's like, "Oh, I listened to your episode with 2 earlier, and what that guy said completely wrong." We haven't even had something where we've had an episode where someone said something completely different. They've all said pretty much the same thing.
I'll be honest, we have gone into a few episodes where I was prepared to disagree.
Yeah.
I was prepared to say, this may not go the way I'm thinking it might go, and how do I handle it if I don't agree with what our guest is going to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
But they've not worked out that way. They've all...
And some of the times we try and bring on people who we think are going to, I shouldn't
challenge
what other things that have been said. And, or I'm thinking of National Deer Association.
Yeah.
I would listen to a bunch of interviews before. I'm like, man, this is so in line with so many other things that Audubon Society is doing and National Wildlife Federation is doing, and all these. They're doing the exact same thing. They have a different goal in mind, but I think that needs to be showcased. I think people think they have a different goal. National Deer Association has a different goal. I think people need to know they're on the same team, and that's where Kyle Linebarger's done a fantastic job of like. It's and he's still. I was on his page the other day, and I'm reading through the comments, and people were upset that he showed something hunting related on his channel, and he's like, I'm not, I can't remember exactly. He's like, I'm not a hunter. He didn't say he was a hunter first, but he's like, I'm a hunter, and I also love native plants, and we can exist simultaneously. Like, just because you don't agree with one section of that, because it happens on the hunting side too, where there people don't like native plants. But just because you don't agree with one side of that doesn't mean that I should only cater to what you want.
But we've had guests where we talked about cultivars or gardening cultivars,
and
which
completely changed. I went in
changed
thinking
my
I was going to
perception
disagree.
of it. Not, I went in there preparing to disagree and saying, "Oh no, our values align. We're on the same.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We're really talking about the same thing."
Yeah, and they make some really good points. When, like in cultivars in particular, it's like, hey, we want more people to be excited about native plants. So if we can find a wild type cultivar of something that's going to have greater garden success, and now that person going to their big box store or a garden center and they're picking up a native plant for the first time, and you have something that is 90% likely to be successful, or it's seed grown and maybe it's 75% likely, is that greater chance of success even though it's a cultivar?
Yeah.
But because it's just going to open the door.
Or they're
like,
not
oh wow,
saying,
this is a native plant and it worked. And
and they're not saying, hey, let's plant 100% cultivars. They're saying, no, we want as many natives as possible, but it doesn't hurt to incorporate some if it makes the customer happy and get them more excited about doing this project. So it's, or just knowing more about cultivars and how pollinators interact with them.
Yeah.
There were so many things that have been eye-opening for us where we were prepared to stand our ground, and really we were all on the same page.
Yep.
And that's what having conversations are about. It's some of these sometimes are difficult to have, but these conversations are important to kind of realize what everyone's intentions are. It's easy to just say, I don't like this, I don't want to do this, they're wrong.
Yeah.
And then you have the conversation, I'm like, oh no, we're really on the same page, we're talking about the same things.
Yeah.
And it's just the approach with how do we talk about this and how to make the circle bigger and how to approach people and have conversations.
Something else that I was thinking of, the last time I was on a hike a couple months ago with my wife, we were talking about, we'd actually talked about it previously to this, and then we talked about it on the hike because we saw one. And this would have made like a great Take It or Leave It, or Tom's Petty. I guess it is still a Tom's Petty. But the rock stacking, I forget what the people call them, but the rock stacking in like on hiking trails and all that, kind of going back to what I was saying about like leaving things where they are and not trying to minimize your disturbance, is people don't, especially when it comes to the waterways, people do it in like creeks all the time or along the beaches. That under rock like habitat is so crucially important to so many like macroinvertebrates and or is it microinvertebrates? I forget. I'm not the biologist here, but it's so critical to these different creatures. Some of your larval stages of insects and that kind of stuff. That when you stack, you're actually like destroying pretty significant habitat. Not maybe your rock pile on its own does not, but when you have 1,000 hikers a day and nearly every single group is building one, now all of a sudden you have 100 or 200 of these, you just tore up a whole bunch of the bottom of that river, and you have a stretch where you're not going to have nearly as many of those really important creatures, because they're the bottom of the food chain in a lot of cases. So your fish are relying on them, and then you have things that are relying on the fish. So while it thinks it's like this natural like thing that you're doing where it's not making an impact, it is actually making an impact. Same even on land where you like salamanders live under rocks and logs, and I remember flipping rocks back when I was a kid going through the woods and flipping over stuff and seeing what was underneath. And then you put it back.
What made me think about it, that was a hard one for me because I was thinking in the same lines of who hasn't walked by a stream and started skipping rocks?
Yeah.
You know, and you think, you know, you're probably doing 10, 20 rocks maybe. And then there's a bunch, like, how many people are doing that same thing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, but they're still going back into the water. I don't know. I don't know. That was a really tough one for me.
But yeah, it's something I, like, again, I was thinking about it. Someone posted something about it. I think Kyle Leibarger even posted something about it shortly after that too. And I'm like, no, that makes a lot of sense. And it's something so people think is so innocuous. Is innocuous a word meaning like not that big a deal?
I think so.
My wife's was an English teacher, and she always says, she's like, you say words, but you don't actually know what they mean. Do it all the time. Makes you sound smarter. It's a great life advice. But people think, oh, it's really not making that big of a difference. But when you say everyone's doing it, then it really does. And it kind of goes back to, why do we all feel we need to leave our mark that we were there? Like,
you're not carving your name in a
people would frown upon
tree.
it much more if we were carving our name into a tree. But I don't know how many years, 40 years ago, people wouldn't have thought anything of that either. Yeah, we just, like, I don't know what's up with. When I go hiking, I don't even want people to know I'm there.
Yeah, I'm not changing anything. I can't say, I've never carved my name in a tree. I've never, you know, other than taking photos, I've never brought a souvenir home. I have skipped rocks. You know, I've never done a rock pile. You know, we tend to explore and leave, and leave nothing behind. So.
Yeah, there was even like research I saw. I didn't really dive into it too much, but I saw like the headlines on talking about how it was, what was it called? It was like how close humans had to get to animals before the animals altered their patterns. And for some stuff, it's like hundreds of yards. It's not like you're like a squirrel. Okay, you're 100 feet away or 50 feet away, and they start to alter. They'll start to hide and alter. Oh, that's. Remember, I'm trying to think of a good, like if you had a bear show up in your yard, you're going to hide in your house. You're not going to go out, and that's kind of like what's happening to the deer and the bears. And like when they have humans walking through their environment is all of a sudden, they're going to hide. The same way a squirrel or a deer is going to hide if a coyote or a fox or something they're scared of is going to come through. It's not just humans, but, yeah, I think a lot of people, like, you think about it when you're going hiking. They're blaring, we've talked about music before. Yeah. You're blaring your music. You're making this big commotion so that you can enjoy the outside, but you're, like, diminishing diminishing nature while you're doing that. Even if you don't have music, just walking. Like, things are going to hear you and get scared. And,
well, perfect example. We get deer in our yard nightly, and it's anywhere from 2 to 5 at a time. And I'll be at a window and I'll see them, and I'll go, Agatha, we have deer.
Yeah.
And they all look at me, and I'm in the house. All the windows are shut. It's winter. Doors are shut, and they hear, like, if I move the curtain, and they all look like they're all looking at me. Like, it's not taking much. I'm not trying to. Like, I'm actually in the house trying to be quiet, and they're still noticing me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it doesn't take a whole lot.
And that's not me saying, oh, you shouldn't go hiking, you shouldn't go out in nature. I've been saying the opposite. It's just another thing I think we need to be cognizant of as we're going through the woods. You're taking in nature, but realizing you're making an impact too, and minimizing that impact. I think we have to live. I've said extractive a lot on this podcast, but I think, we just have, like, extractive lifestyles, and I think we just need to be cognizant of it. And then when we are interacting with nature, we should try and interact with nature more often, but when we're interacting, try to make it so we're not extracting from other things.
I just got to take it or leave it for our next buzz.
Okay.
I just got a great I got to write a note so
Yeah.
I don't forget, because I will forget.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's I'm sure there's a lot of things I wish I knew 10 years ago that I'm not thinking of now.
But I think that's a good rant. You
Yeah.
know, there's always things you wish you knew, but I think it sounds like we're both on the same page with a lot of them, with what we wish we knew. And it's just, you know, I'm proud that as I get older, I still have that yearning to learn, or that wanting to learn and to grow. And that's so important, that you never know everything. You're never done learning.
Yep.
And I'm still craving it. I'm still trying to, like, every time we have a guest, I'm like, oh my God, what, I have to retain this, you know? And we're fortunate enough that we get the forum where we get to ask people that we look up to and that are experts any question we want. I do feel like a little kid in that respect.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, oh, we have the opportunity to ask whatever we want and get an answer, you know, and I don't think we've ever had a guest not answer one of our questions.
Yeah, no, not that I can think of
No.
either. Yeah, it's I'm glad you brought that up, because that's kind of where I was concluding too. Was it's important to just realize that life is all about learning and changing. And there's a phrase Steve Rennell from Meat Eater always used to say. It doesn't say as much anymore. And he's like about things changing and opinions changing, and people, especially nowadays, it's like, well, this person, he tweeted this 10 years ago, and that. So if he tweeted that then, he must think the same thing now. Or he said that then, he must think the same thing now. Once you're that person, you're always that person. And his phrase is well, I used to, he used an expletive. I used to poop my pants, but things change. Like I used to poop my, like I used to wear diapers and poop my pants, but things change as you learn and you grow and you mature and have different perspectives and different experiences. Your opinions change on things, and I think it's important to continually learn and challenge your beliefs. There's a whole thing with Adam Grant, who I've profiled a couple of his books, not because they have anything to do with native plants, but it's just that mindset of like constantly learning. And he's like, you should want to find out you're wrong. Like, finding out you're wrong means that you are so much closer to what's right. And then I saw a graphic he put up about like critical thinkers, and it's like you have people who are like, oh, I'm always right, versus, I hope I'm not wrong, or what if I'm wrong, and then like, I wonder what is right.
Yeah.
And it's just like, finding out you were wrong about something. I find out I'm wrong all the time, and it's great, because it means, oh, I was wrong there, and you just have to make an active change once you find out you're wrong. You can't stay, well, I'm wrong, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
The funny thing is, that's why I'm thankful I grew up in an age that I did, because at least not all of my mistakes are living in infamy on the internet.
Yep.
You know, like, you're at an age group where you could go back and probably see a lot of your mistakes through.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Or you know, and it's, you know, so my generation isn't held accountable because you can erase them. But I look at Facebook memories, I'm like, ooh, I really posted that, or I really thought that way? That's horrible.
Yeah.
I need to delete
there was
that.
I've done that too. It's like, oh, I can't believe I ever said that, or took that picture.
Or I can't believe I said that publicly.
There was something it was like a tabloid headline or on Facebook the other day type thing, and but it was saying, I can't remember what celebrity it was. But they're like, oh, why was it so much better to become a celebrity in the 80s than now? And they're like, because you could do cocaine in the club bathroom and no one knew about it. and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
There's some truth to that.
And
some truth to
what's crazy to me is, like, we don't get that political, other than when we're talking politics on the show. But you think, like, with how true that is, that everything is recorded. You can go back on someone's Facebook timeline, on anyone, and find something cringy they said at some point, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, over the last 15, 20 years. I got a Facebook in 2007, so how long's that been? 15 years? Yeah.
I was going to say, probably for me it was like 2000. It might have been the end of 2007, 2008.
Yeah, so like over 15 years, there's tons of things that I posted that I'm like looking back on, oh, that was bad. And a lot of times I'll say, I don't want that to be a reflection of me now, so I'll get rid of it.
Yeah.
But what's crazy to me is that we can do this for anybody, but you can still have someone like George Santos completely fabricate their life and get elected to public office, and no one found anything on. Well, I guess a lot of people did find stuff on him, but it never really got out in big enough circles that it made a meaningful difference in that election. And I don't know George Santos or his policies, but I do know the news stories about how he didn't work where he said he worked, and he was not Jewish, he was Jewish, and that kind of stuff. So,
but, I at least in a way, it holds everyone accountable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can go back. I see these memories, and I can at least see my personal growth of where I was and where I am now. Just say, I'm not that person anymore.
Yep.
Maybe I was at one point, but I'm not that person anymore, and I'm proud of that. So it's a good way to at least hold you accountable, to remind you of some of your prior mistakes, your past mistakes. So I guess in some way I should be thankful that it does exist to some extent. To just it's just like measuring your growth in a way publicly.
So, Fran, I think that was probably a good, better final thought than we asked for us to each give a final thought.
Yeah, I agree. And that was a good hour.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you remember what you say at the end of podcast episodes? Can you, I would usually pull up an old one when I do these on the road and record it separate, but I think we should just try it.
Love to give a huge shout out to RJ Comer for our, for our theme music. To make sure you stream or buy his music wherever you consume music, or make sure you check out his playlist on Pandora. You can follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at @nativeplants_healthy planet, or
Pineland
YouTube at
Nursery.
Pinelands Nursery, or you can follow us on YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. Trying to think if there's, I know I typically mention the Facebook group.
Yeah.
I'm thinking there's something in, don't forget the question and comment line. Although I don't have that number memorized off the top of my head. But you can call it will be in the show notes. You can call, leave a question or make a comment. We'll play it on a future episode of The Buzz and try to answer it to the best of our abilities. And a shout out to everyone who's joined our Facebook group, Native Plants Healthy Planet on Facebook. I think we're at 1.4 thousand followers at this point, and it's been a great conversation.
Yeah, no, there's some really cool stuff that's been going on there.
I've made really good friends from that group as well. That's our one way that we do get to interact with our listeners on a daily basis, and I'm thankful for that venue. Yeah,
so you can buy Native Plants Healthy Planet merch at our website, www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. There's a link right at the top of the screen, takes you to our Teespring store, where we have t-shirts, aprons, kids' clothes, baby clothes, water bottles, phone cases, all kinds of stuff that you can show not just your love. No, I don't think there's any hats yet, Fran. Thanks for putting me on the spot there. But you can showcase your love of not just our podcast, but really your love of native plants and what they do for our planet. And
I'm wearing a native plants shirt right now.
I'm wearing one that says the Doug Talmy plants on it, because we're walking in this trade show and we're gonna make sure people know that we're all about native plants.
We're wearing our native plant flag.
So, and then you can listen to our podcast really wherever you consume podcasts, whatever platform you're listening on now. You can hear it there, obviously, because you're listening to us. If you're at all possible, especially on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, if you can leave a 5-star review, that goes a long way into getting us in front of other people's ears. And if you do a little write-up, I'll actually give you a shout-out on one of our Buzz episodes. So, and the other thing that'll really help promote us with other people is you might be in the car. If you're driving, don't do this. But you might be in a college library, or you might be sitting at work. Find someone near you within arm's reach. Grab their phone. Subscribe to our podcast. New subscribers are king in this whole thing.
Yes,
Get new subscribers. All of a sudden, you get more new subscribers. It's just keeps fulfilling itself. It's a pyramid scheme. So that goes a long way too. Suggest, say you really enjoyed this episode. Suggest a friend listen to it. Say, hey, I really enjoyed this. I think you might enjoy it too. And maybe they will, and they'll subscribe, and maybe they won't, and they'll no longer be friends with you. You won't know until you try. So with that, I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thank you for taking this ride with us to Baltimore this morning. We appreciate you listening in. I'm not sure when this will air, so I can't say what you'll be hearing next. But like always, there will be another episode next week, so make sure you tune in. And until then, keep it native.
Stay tuned for more of the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
All right. We're back. Now we gotta merge back in the traffic.
And then
Oh, a trooper just pulled up.
I didn't realize there was a thing back there.
Yeah. That's why I pulled
up
over where it was a little bit.
I was like,
wider.
You coming to? They coming to give you a hard time?
Yeah, we're coming to you live from the shoulder of Interstate 95. We're leaving Baltimore, Maryland. Just got through the tunnel and realized my microphone was in my bag, and I had to go park and go get it. Got buzzed by one truck. That was a little close.
Yeah, I was a little worried for you there.
But this time, we did one of these where we actually recorded on our way down to the Mid-Atlantic Nursery Trade Show and kind of talked about some of the things we wished we knew 5-10 years ago, and that we've learned over the last couple of years that that we wished we knew, things that we know now that if we known a couple of years prior would have had some major outlook on life. So, Fran, there's no use. It's never going to stand up the way you want it to.
I was just leaning towards me. I was just trying to.
But now we're on the way back from the Mid-Atlantic Nursery Trade Show, and Fran, what do we want to talk about?
I thought it would be interesting, since on the way down we talked about things that we wish we had knew. So we just spent 3 days in an industry trade show. I thought it'd be fun to talk about what did we learn.
Yeah.
We're coming out on the other side now. We're on our way home, and it was my biggest takeaway, besides the fact that this was a very well attended show, and it over the past couple of years, attendance is always, it's a big show. It's a very big industry. It's the biggest one on the East Coast. People were reinvigorated. Last year there was a COVID scare, and not a lot of people showed up, and the year before it was closed, and people were back and ready to talk, and it was overall a very positive vibe.
Yeah. My big takeaway was that the green giants are still the most popular tree 20 years running.
20 years later, for screening.
And then my other big takeaway is that my voice is hanging on like a loose tooth.
I was almost voiceless this morning after I don't know if I've ever talked this much. I've almost talked myself hoarse.
And this is it's pretty typical for me. I get home and it's like you can feel it starts to hurt, and could you imagine being like a radio DJ where your job is to talk for like 4? Well, I guess I should take that back. Like a sports show person where you're talking nonstop for like 4 hours a day.
Yeah, that's got to be tough. You got to take care of your voice.
Yeah.
But my real big takeaway, honestly, like all joking aside, everyone was talking about natives.
Mm-hmm.
And there were people that came in that said, my goal here was to learn more about natives. And even though there's more native companies, or there's companies that put native on their display, but they're not 100% native. But they know enough that it's a buzzword that they want to capitalize on it. But people that are strictly native plant growers, there's more, but less than 10% of the trade show? 5%?
I think
less than
10% would be generous.
Less than 5%?
I was trying to figure out how many booths are actually there.
I want to say 1,800.
Yeah, there's quite a few, and just walking around, if you look at the people who are like real deal ingrained in the native plant industry, not just saying, you know what, this is buzzy and trendy, I'm going to start doing some more of this. I would say a generous estimate would be less than 30.
Yeah.
And more realistically, it might even be less than 20.
Yeah.
But there's ones I hadn't met before that I met there today. In fact, I was talking to our new friend Chad from Native Forest Nursery in Georgia, And sitting in his booth was another guy. I can't remember his name or the name of his nursery, but he was doing a very similar thing in Florida, on the Florida-Georgia line. So this is happening all over the country. It tends to be pretty regionally specific, but it's an exciting time to be in the native plant world, because I couldn't even count how many garden centers came up to us and said, hey, I'm really interested in bringing more native plants to my garden center, which is great for a lot of our listeners who aren't in the trade, aren't landscapers, aren't in the business, but they want to plant native plants, and they're a lot easier to go to their local garden center than try and, another fun story. One of our listeners who drove all the way down from New Jersey to North Carolina to visit Carolina Natives Bee Native Plant Shop and load up their Suburban with native plants. Yeah. And I don't remember who that was. I remember they asked the question, I guided them there, but that's awesome.
That's awesome.
You might not have to drive all the way down to North Carolina. I hope you do, so that you can still see Bill and Shelby and that gang, because they're great people, but you might only have to drive around the corner to your local garden center and you'll be able to find some native plants now.
But the other thing I'm taking away is, we're a native plant grower, but if we had so many new people come to us, and this is an industry trade show, saying our goal was to focus on natives, a lot of other growers have to come away with that impression too, that aren't native plant growers. So maybe that will change the industry a little bit too. Maybe we'll see a little bit more, even if they're not 100%, maybe they're incorporating more natives, and maybe that will trickle down to our listeners, to the homeowners that are looking. So that is a great sign.
And that was another thing that kind of spun off of that, and this was something we've mentioned before on our show, and then it's been in the works for the last couple of years, was kind of starting to get some of these native plant growers together to brainstorm and kind of find out what are compare ideals and ethics and that kind of stuff. And what we really knew already, but definitely found out, is most of us have similar ideals and ethics and goals and what we want to see come out of this native plant movement. And the big thing for me was we got together, we talked about this stuff, and realized what everyone's strengths and weaknesses are, and really started the baseline for having a united voice for native plants, to make sure that, like so many other industries, things that become trendy and buzzy and then everyone starts doing it. It's like Apple makes the first iPhone, and then everyone's making a touchscreen phone and it has the same shape. They all basically look the same, they do the same things, but Apple was the first one. And not everyone had the same dream as Apple. They don't have the same motive as Apple. They're just like, hey, we can make a lot of money if we have something that's similar to Apple. Not to say that Apple wasn't trying to make money, but they were trying to, Steve Jobs was trying to introduce something that was going to change the way we live. Yeah. And the followers, were the people who followed along and copied what he did, were just saying, hey, this is what's trendy, this is where we're going to make money. It wasn't to make our lives better. We want to avoid that in the native plant space. There's, like any trend, there's going to be other people who say, oh yeah, I'm going to start growing native plants but where are their ethics, where are their morals? Are they thinking about ecotype? Not that you need to have ecotype to make sure it's a good native plant, but it's something that should be considered, I think.
Yeah.
Are they willing to tell the whole truth when someone's asking questions about pesticide use and neonic use or provenance, that kind of stuff, provenance, or are they just trying to get it out in the space and hope no one finds out?
And what was nice after spending an evening together, we had some very good conversations regarding this, and that we had a lot in common, both work related and unwork related, and we had the same concerns. Mm-hmm. And we talked a lot about this, and it will move forward. This is just the first step.
Yeah, I forget if this was the you, Fran, or if this was on one of the ones I recorded with, I think it was with Kyle and Shannon. I first voiced it, but I think I've voiced it multiple times. Was even with some of the cultivars and all that, which I've changed my opinion on, to be honest. But with that kind of stuff, it has a place, it has a purpose, and it's I don't want to call it corruption of native plants, but that mainstreaming of native plants is gonna happen. You're gonna have start seeing a lot more native plants in proven winter spots, for instance. Not to say that's, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I actually think it's a good thing, as long as they're coming from the right sources. And I'd rather see, like, if Proven Winners is getting their stuff and it's done the right way, I'm fine with it. I just don't want to see it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to see it get corrupted. And that's what we were trying to work against and kind of put our heads together and find ways that we can advance the whole native plant mission and make sure it's going the way that science and ecology says it should.
Now, speaking of cultivars, I had a very interesting conversation with Ann English, who's one of our listeners, but also the author of A is for Aquifer.
I have that book.
Yeah, so she
I
stopped.
I didn't see her.
Actually, she stopped because she wanted to take a picture of the Cattail Moonshine book in her booth.
Oh, no.
And because she was really interested, but she was saying that one of her neighbors, who was recently turned on to natives, had said that he was ripping out all of the nasty cultivars and planting natives. And she said, why don't you leave the cultivars and just plant natives and incorporate them?
Yeah.
Like, it's not an invasive, it's not an exotic. It's cultivars, and you're not hurting anything by having them there.
Yes.
She goes, they can coexist, and over time, if you want to do more, you can do more.
Yeah,
so I thought that was a really good message or takeaway.
Yeah, I agree. It's like I mentioned, through the podcast, really, I kind of changed my stance on cultivars, and I think they have a place. There is importance there. Now, and the people who are growing the cultivars, for the most part, the ones that are in this native plant space, not the ones that are going to try and get in the native plant space very soon, tend to agree with us that to have a cultivar isn't great for a restoration project where you want this diversity. But for garden worthiness, and you shouldn't have almost sometimes all the same cultivar in a garden. You might want to mix it up and have different stuff. So it's like there's definitely a place for them. And so I hated that someone used the term nasty cultivars, because they aren't nasty. They're plants. They're native plants in a lot of cases. Just because it has a name in quotes after it doesn't necessarily make it bad. Although you will hear that a lot in a lot of these native plant groups.
Now,
and it's not something we do, but I understand that there's a purpose for them.
There's a place. I wouldn't use them for a restoration project.
Not.
But one of the other takeaways I had was, being that it's an industry trade show, I was very humbled by the amount of listeners that are in our industry that stop by the booth just to say, I don't really get a chance to work with natives, but I'm a listener of the podcast and I appreciate the work that you do.
Yeah. Someone even asked me that, like, how do you measure like success with the podcast? And I was like, well, this was a great example. And you have people that are like customers, potential customers, or just in the industry and interested in natives, and they're coming up to you and that they listen. And even like we talk about Bill Young, not that he was here, but he's a restoration professional, a college professor, someone way smarter than me, and he listens to this and finds value in it and learns a lot. That means a lot to me. That's a sign of success. We can look at the metrics and all that too until we're blue in the face, but that's not what necessarily keeps us going. It's that people find value in what we're doing and that we learn so much as well.
You know, if it makes a difference, to me, that's successful, regardless of how many people listen. If one person listens and it makes a difference and they change some of the things they do, that's a success to me.
Yeah. So. And then the other one that I thought was really good is actually a friend of ours, and referencing their boss, who was also a friend of ours. And they all listen to our podcast, and their boss is like, hey, how do we do that too?
Yeah.
And I was that's very flattering that people will say, hey, this is successful enough that they want to copy it.
Another very large nursery in our industry stopped by and said, well, now that you two are influencers, I guess I have to figure out a way to do business with you. So it was very flattering and very humbling. And it was nice.
I was recognized at least 3 times off of TikTok.
You were. Oh, someone else mentioned it to me when you
Oh,
were
okay.
there.
And Fran, you were recognized
off of the Leaf video.
Yeah, so.
They're like, yeah, you were laying in a hammock. And I was like, that's what you took away from that whole video was the hammock.
So, but in all seriousness, it's very humbling when we run into people who listen, because it can feel like we're talking to ourselves a lot, because we literally are. We're sitting in a car right now, talking to ourselves, and that there's thousands of people that are going to hear this, and the not too distant future is really humbling that they find value in it. We can't appreciate that.
We met Ryan, who was our listener, who had listened to us for how many minutes?
I think it was like months when he totaled
months.
It all up. Yeah.
And he wasn't caught up yet. So it was nice to see a lot of our listeners face to face and talk about it. But another takeaway for me was, if you want to speak about the reach of native plants, Tom and I had a little downtime and got to visit the Guinness Brewery, and the first thing we noticed when we walked in was a Paw Paw Pale Ale.
Yeah, and if you're in that Baltimore area, I'd recommend going to the Guinness Brewery. It's a really unique story of why it's here in the U.S. and why they chose Baltimore, and it's I'm not going to bore everyone with it right now, but it's just a really cool place, and they emphasize American creativity in their brewing process.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to see that everyone knows Guinness and like the one or two more popular varieties, and then the Blonde Ale is their American beer that they came out with. But they have like 10 or 12 other beers that they're brewing there that they're just trying out and seeing how it works, and just constantly refreshing, and like a lot of other craft breweries do.
Now, all native plant stuff aside, it was my favorite beer that we had.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I wish I wish they had it canned so that we could have taken some home
and drank some every time we recorded.
Yes,
that would have been nice.
Yeah, that would have been very nice. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. But it was refreshing to see. No matter where you turn, there was some hint of native plants. There was a strong buzz about it in the trade show, and it was a very strongly attended trade show. Like, typically it's a 3-day trade show and the last day's dead, and Tom and I were busy from start to finish, which was just a very nice takeaway. Like, I'm coming back kind of like re-energized, refocused, and hopefully we made some really good new contacts, and we get to spread native plants even further
and made a lot of new friends and strengthened bonds with old friends. It was the one thing we alluded to it earlier, but we had that native plant growers meeting, and it's just, we had nearly 30 people who were affiliated with growing native plants in some fashion, whether they were business owners, propagators, growers, all up and down the chain, competitors of ours that we're friends with, all in one room, enjoying a drink and some wings and French fries together, and just kind of sharing war stories in a way. And that's, like we alluded to earlier, it's really important to advancing like what we believe is the true like ecological reason behind why we want native plants. It's not just a buzzy trend word. There's a real purpose behind these, and it's more than pollinators. It's more than just wildlife and erosion. It's all of these things, and it's one of those things where the sum is greater than all the parts. And like I already said, it's just, we want to make sure that message isn't corrupted into, hey, it's pretty, and which is, it's still okay. It's better than where we are, but it's we got to make sure we're recognizing everything there and not diluting the benefit of these plants because we're doing what horticulture tends to do, and smuggling and breeding and crossing until you have a plant that has a double bloom and it's neon orange instead of purple, and it loses a lot of its benefit because we need to manipulate this thing, and so that it's what we want, not what nature wants.
The other thing too, and it's not necessarily plant related wise, but industry wide, that people that we're friends with that are competitors as well, we're very willing to share tips to make us more successful. Hey, you may want to try this product. This works for me, and I think it might work for you. And they have no gain out of it. If anything, it hurts them. But it was the community of trying to elevate each other and help each other, and it's. I don't know that you get that with many other industries or professions.
Yeah, it's the nursery industry is probably second to the seed industry in that, where I have not had many better relationships come out of the seed industry, where it's like they're just immediately helpful before they even get to know you. But the nursery industry is a close second in my mind for the camaraderie that comes out of it. Just at the end of the day, we're all trying to grow something green and put good roots on it and get it out the door in the hands of people who are going to love it and see it every day. So we want each other to be successful. It's not like banking where it's like it's J.P. Morgan does not want to see Bank of America succeed, and they're all competing and trying to one up each other and all that. We want everyone to plant more plants and cure plant blindness, and just that concept that people driving down this same highway right now, right along next to us, aren't looking at the woods and seeing white pines and eastern red cedar and all this other stuff that's sticking out, sycamores and all kinds of stuff. So and as well as the Phragmites and the Chinese silvergrass, I think I might just see back there, and that kind of stuff. We talk about just in a month's time from when we're recording in January, maybe 2 months, we're going to start seeing the Forsythia bloom and the Bradford pears bloom and all that kind of stuff.
Celandine and all that.
The stuff that plant blindness goes both ways. There's the plants we like, and there's the plants we don't like, and people are blind to them in both regards. So, it's that was another takeaway for me was how far we have to go in education about native plants and invasive plants.
And invasive. Too. I was going to say, and friends of mine in the industry that believe that the whole talk of some of these plants being invasives as a ruse, that they're not really invasive because they're not really in touch with nature the way that some other people are, and it was really eye-opening to me that really you don't think this plant's invasive, or you don't understand this plant's invasive. It was kind of shocking to me from people that I know and respect to hear that from.
Yeah. And it's not at this trade show, but I've heard comments prior to this from some folks. Oh, how do we figure out that these plants are invasive? And I'm like, well, they're challenging some other people's opinions. And I'm like, this guy's got a PhD in ecology. And the guy sitting next to him also has a PhD in environmental science, and then you just because you grow the plants doesn't mean you know a lot about the plants more than most people. Yeah. But doesn't know how to get it from a seed or a cutting to when it's going out the door, and then you don't see it anymore. And I think a lot of people forget about that. That if you don't invasive doesn't mean that it spreads and it gets bigger right next to it. It could mean a bird eats that seed and flies 100 feet away and poops out that seed, and now it grows where it's not, where it shouldn't. That's one of the things that drives me nuts. Is like, how can you claim this is an invasive when I could take you just to the back of our farm and show you a whole bunch of privet, some Japanese barberry, multiflora rose out the wazoo. It's like, how do you not think this stuff's and Bradford pears as many as you could imagine, and you're gonna deny that? Do you not drive anywhere in the spring? Open your frickin' eyes. Yeah. It's I think a lot of people they're burying their head in the sand because there's that financial tie to it. And, exactly. And we're doing this to, not the podcast, we're growing native plants to earn a living. We would be... But we believe in it. We're doing it to make a difference. But we would be naive to think... and we're having this podcast because it helps promote native plants, and the more people are interested in native plants, the more people are buying native plants, the more people buy native plants, that money's going to trickle down to us at some point. It's not like we're blind to that. What doing this is helping us financially in a way, too, by recording a podcast. we're doing it for financial gain in a roundabout way, but we believe this is really important. The ecology and the environment and all the science that backs up those things. It's just overwhelming. And to see, like Fran, like you said, to see people we respect, like kind of bury their head in the sand and deny that, this isn't invasive, but they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars off that plant. Well, you're biased, in my opinion. But from an NJLA standpoint, the New Jersey Nursery Landscape Association, as they need to put food on not just their table, but all their employees. And these are some big nurseries where they have hundreds of employees. And you ban the sale of certain plants. You're taking away meals from their families, or from their employees' families. So I understand. Yeah, we have to work together to find an alternative that's suitable. And that's, Fran, you brought a good point earlier too. It's not just because Japanese barberry is now banned for sale doesn't mean you're not going to sell plants. It's not like, okay, so I can't. I'm a landscaper and I can't put Japanese barberry in this landscape anymore.
They're going to plant something else.
I'm going to plant something else. It's not like I'm just not going to plant anything. It's
it's being too comfortable and I can sell this. I know it's going to sell. People are just going to ask for it by name. They don't want to do the innovation. They don't want to be the pioneer and say, this. When I started in the nursery industry in the late 80s, there were a lot more native plants available in the industry. It was marketing that really took hold of this is new and improved, this is better, this is new and improved, this is going to not die, this is going to live longer. That's marketing changed that, because I can go back to the first place I worked and go, we were growing a lot, coralberry. We were going, a lot of stray species. We were growing things that Viburnum macerapholium, things that you don't really see anymore in the industry.
Yeah, and some of that, I wasn't around for this, and I wasn't in that part of the industry anyway. But I think a lot of it boils down to where we were saying the nursery industry is like really friendly and helpful, but there's parts that aren't, and that's like when you're both growing a species native plant, or any plant for that matter, and it's hard to say, well, mine's better than theirs, other than when you get it in the person's hands and they could see that which one's better. And they might not, neither of them might be, they might be exactly the same. But when you start to get into the branding and the cultivars, now it's playing into an emotional response or a neurological response from someone because they like the color, they like the pot or the label, or there's just things that are more attractive, and alliteration is attractive and all this stuff. And you can start to steal market share from one another.
Yes.
So, like the Rose Wars are freaking insane.
That's a whole nother, who's gonna release the next Peace Rose.
Yep.
And it's the breeding and it's amazing. That's a whole nother world.
I don't want to call it a pyramid scheme, but like a pyramid of dollars. That it's like, well, if you're just growing whatever, like you're just growing to grow red maple. Well, if you were to patent a different maple, you could get rich. Like if you develop this new maple it's more red or more purple, or it holds its leaves longer, it does this or that, you can make a hell of a lot of money. Yeah. And so again, it's like I don't hold that against anyone. I don't agree with some of it, but it's I don't know. When you're just doing it for money and you don't actually believe in what you're doing, that's where it's like.
Well, that probably occurs, like you mentioned, that occurs in every industry.
Yeah.
And and that's why sticking together and promoting the right message is really important to us, because it's you wanna if you're going to do something for a living, you want to stand behind something that you believe in.
Yeah. Yep.
And we know that the good for everyone, in the whole ecosystem, what this means, you want to be you want to spread that good message, and you don't want to see that tarnished.
Yeah.
Or taken advantage of.
I'm going to apologize for coughing. I'm not used to being, like, when we're in the studio and I can, like, kind of turn my head away and no one hears me cough.
Or take a sip of water.
You're definitely hearing me cough and rattle my water bottle
I can
around.
hit the cough button when,
Yep,
so but it's, it was a very good show. I think we came
they got him, Fran.
Yeah.
They
Cops just whizzed by and pulled someone over. I was just fortunate it wasn't us.
Yeah.
So Tom's driving very responsibly.
I wasn't at the time when that officer pulled out. I was going
that guy
fast.
was driving
He was
faster
going
than you.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of great takeaways. Like I said, we're leaving feeling very accomplished, yet very tired.
Oh, I'm so tired.
I'm feeling it.
When we had our native plant growers meeting, Fran and I were going to go to bed at a reasonable... I had a very responsible 6 drinks. Which
I was a very respectable 3. I was behaving.
We got to a point, I'm like, we're getting 10 o'clock. I've already drank more than I wanted to. But yeah, it's time to go back. And we had like a 2-block walk, but as we're grabbing our coats to go, we got pulled in another conversation that went on for another 2 hours.
2 hours,
and it was fantastic. It was so much fun.
Yeah. We weren't trying to get out of the conversation. It was a great conversation.
But yeah, it was an awesome conversation. Then I'm like, we're rolling up on midnight, and like most people, I also turned into a pumpkin at midnight. So
yeah.
Yeah.
The fun stuff behind the scenes that you don't necessarily get to hear. So we get back to Tom found us a nice Airbnb in the Inner Harbor.
Which already, we're 2 blocks off the Inner Harbor. We're at this Airbnb, which they send me the directions to get to, and it's like a treasure map. It's
really
take a left into this
back alley
and take 30 paces to the north.
Listen, it was an unmarked building with doors with no windows.
The original directions that they said, put this address in and it'll take you to this building. Took us to a demolished building.
Yeah, it was.
At which point I was like, I've been fooled. I just booked a building that is no longer here.
But it was a beautiful 2-bedroom, 2-bath Airbnb. But we were very happy. So we get back that night, and we both retire to our rooms, not realizing that our rooms and the windows, which very high ceilings, very large windows, 2nd story overlook the busy street. So it wasn't until the next morning Tom and I realized we both were woken up by the same thing. So at around 2:30 in the morning, it was someone yelling at himself or to himself as going down the street.
Yeah, walking down the road for quite a way, at least a couple blocks, because I talked to other people who were also woken up by this same gentleman.
Guy, like a block or 2 around.
Yeah, a couple blocks away. And just walking down the street, yelling.
And then the car at 4 in the morning that was blaring "Mo Money, Mo Problems" at full blast. I'm pretty sure they played the whole song, drove around the block, and then played the whole song again. So I know I heard it at least twice.
Yeah.
But it was, you're getting a haggard start to the next day, and then we were out till 10 o'clock the next day. All good conversations and doing good work. And it's, how many, 8 hours on the trade show floor each day. And I feel it in my legs. I feel it in my throat. My voice hurts. Yeah, I'm tired. I'm happy. I'm looking forward to sleeping in my own bed tonight.
It's one of those things, and I feel bad, and I apologize to my wife beforehand when this happens. I'm like, I don't want to talk or listen for a couple hours. Just let me be. So I wonder if this went out here, Fran. No, it's still recording.
All right.
I don't know. I guess the phone went off and it said something different on there.
So I think, just looking, I think that's a good wrap up of how we feel. You can tell we're a little tired. We're a little, maybe a little cranky, but happy. Tired, cranky. Yeah. Very happy. We had some fantastic conversations, made some new friends, and are very proud of the work that we're doing, and very proud of the spotlight that native plants are getting in our industry finally.
What I will actually pitch here, Fran, is we all know I'm an ideas guy. I'm always coming up with new ideas.
Yes.
What do you think about guided audio recordings of what plants are on the side of the roads? And we say, this is mile 102 to 110 on 95 in Maryland. Coming northbound. At 101.3, I see a stand of red cedars.
I think we'd cause a lot of accidents. I did. One of our listeners said they would, when Tom was out making a video of other native plant nurseries in this big trade show, and one of our listeners said, "Oh, I would pay to take that tour of just native plant growers at the trade show booth."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, really?" She goes, "Yeah, I would pay for that." And I'm like, she goes, "I don't know where they all are, and I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
I would pay for a native plant grower tour of MANTS."
Oh, and now this is a serious idea.
Yeah.
What we should actually not necessarily have a tour, but as we have our native plant growers group.
Yeah.
We already said, hey, we're going to plan on meeting at these events, like not just MANTS, but Cultivate, which is a big show out in Ohio, and you have Green and Growing down in North Carolina, which is another big show, and there's Far West, which is out in Oregon, which we don't go to, but I'm sure there's native plant growers who do. And I think what would be wise of us is to publish, or through this group, we put together what all our booth numbers are and have a name and put out our own directory.
Yeah.
Like a virtual one. Obviously, we're not going to print one and say, hey, can you hand this out to the people working But yeah, to have it and put it in a lot of these native plant groups and on Facebook and say, hey, if you're in the professional, you're in the industry, you're going to this trade show, here's the native plant booth.
I think
Cut to the chase.
I think that's a fabulous idea.
I told you, I'm an ideas guy.
You are.
9 out of, I was going to say 9 out of 10. I'll probably go 99 out of 100 are bad ideas. But every once in a while, I stumble across a good one.
I think that would be a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I think that's, and now it's recorded, so Alyssa Lewis is going to hold us to that.
She's going to put that in the Facebook group. Now, I will say this, and this is a long shot, but the seed has been planted that maybe there's a possibility of another live show at a very big venue.
Yeah. Yep.
So I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to jinx it. I would like to see this happen.
We have a couple ideas of live shows that are in the works that might not be happening soon, but at some point. So, something that we can get a little bit more public facing and get out and see people and see a live reaction. That was a lot of fun when you can kind of see, they're starting to fall asleep. This is good. But
they're on their phone. Yeah. They're not even. They're not even paying attention.
So I guess normally when people listen, they probably are on their phones.
Yes, that's true. That's very true.
But so I think that's probably all we need to talk about, Fran.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, I'm looking for other cool trees, but I'm not that great at identifying at 70 miles an hour. So.
No, it's a little hard, especially when everything's deciduous as well.
I did see some Japanese honeysuckle though.
Yeah,
so that one's easy to spot.
Of course, so, that one is easy to spot.
That's one of the things my brother always says is like you start going, especially the roundabouts tend to be really bad, but you start going through and it's like, there's a lot of invasive stuff that's just right along the roadside and no one even knows.
Which is sad.
Tree of Heaven, Japanese honeysuckle, privet, it's all right there. Phragmites is all over the place. It's all right there, and like I said earlier, that we're just plant blind to it and don't realize how big of a deal it is. So, all right.
I think we're just about ready to hit Delaware, and we're on the home stretch home. So we're looking forward to releasing this. You can see what we wish we knew and what we learned, and hopefully you learned a little something too. And we appreciate going on the journey with us. Do we have to do the whole outro again?
I'm not going to cut it out of the first one.
All right.
We're almost 40 minutes, so we might even release this as like a little special episode. I've been thinking about that every once in a while. Do we just do like randomly midweek, just say, hey, we're putting this out too.
Yeah, here's a special.
Here's something in case you're bored.
Yeah.
I guess we should do that again.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, it's my turn, and this is where I say, well, that's going to wrap us up for the day. I forget what else. Thank you for listening to Native Plants, Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
So we have to say thank you to RJ Comer for our theme music for this special episode. We can't do it without him, so make sure you buy or stream his music wherever you consume your music. Check out also his Americana playlist on Pandora. You will Be thankful that you did. It's good gardening playlist. You can follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, on Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, at I'm trying to think. At Instagram at nativeplants_healthyplanet, or at Pinelands Nursery, or you can follow us on YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. Don't forget, we have the question and comment line. I still don't know what that number is off the top of my head, but it will be in the show notes. Call and ask a question or leave a comment. We'll play it on a future episode of The Buzz, and we'll answer your question or comment to the best of our ability. And a bunch of new members. Every time I look, we're approving a bunch of new members for the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. So, and it's a lot of great posts just while we've been at this trade show have popped up.
And Fran and I were rocking our Native Plants Healthy Planet merch all week at this trade show.
We were.
Looking really nice and got a lot of compliments. And if you're interested in also looking really nice and getting a lot of compliments, you can pick up your shirts at our website, www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. There's a link right at the top that takes you to our store. And from there, you can choose t-shirt designs that say plant native plants, eat native plants. Native plants are for the birds, all kinds of stuff. There's phone cases, aprons, all sorts of stuff. More than I could ever imagine that we ever would have had with our name on it.
Yeah.
And we don't keep any of that money. The profits that come from those, we don't keep it. It goes to organizations that we think are doing really, really good work. And that's not to say they're the only organizations doing good work. I wish we had more money we could give away to all of them. And that's only possible if you buy a t-shirt, that we can give away a little extra money to some of these groups. So you can also listen to Native Plants Healthy Planet by going to our website, but you're probably going to listen to your podcast player of choice as we enter beautiful Delaware, the shortest part of our trip, because we fly through in about 10 minutes.
The first state in the nation.
And you're going to listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, really wherever you consume your podcasts. It's always funny when I got a lot of this trade shows like, oh, where can I hear your podcast? Well, anywhere you hear any other podcast. It's not like, what do you think we are, a rinky-dink podcast over here?
Well,
we're influencers now. but no, you can, anywhere you can, you listen to podcasts already, you can find our podcast. Heck, you already found our podcast, so you're probably listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you choose. And if it's all possible, this is the big ask I give every week. Leave a 5-star review, leave a write-up, subscribe, share it with a friend. The more people who do those things, the more eyes see our podcast and hopefully listen to it as well and learn about native plants and why they're important, and get to hear us rant and rave about all the things we hate like invasive plants and love like native plants. So, I think that's about it for me, Fran.
I think that's it.
So with that, I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Make sure you tune in for the next episode. And until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.